I can't remember the last time I got well and truly lost. Maybe I'm too old for it. Kids get lost all the time, disappearing into clothing racks and hedgerows, portals to other worlds. When I was a kid getting lost in the wilds of Cascadia, I may have thought I was exploring an enchanted glen with ancient spirits and anthropomorphic mushroom people, but I was just in the bushes, and somebody probably knew where I was most of the time. I'm forever in their debt for not only watching over me, but more importantly, for letting me believe I was alone. By 1994, I was growing out of the idea of make-believe realms in the bushes. I was 11, and a real piece of shit. I think I stole my copy of Super Metroid from the electronics department of a Zellers. At least several other juvenile delinquents managed to procure a copy of this now legendary cartridge. And despite the inherent risks of being a kid in the 90s, at least some of them lived to become adults, learned to program, and all of a sudden half of the indie games on Steam were calling themselves metroidvanias. Super Metroid is where the DNA for these types of games was written. It's a testament to something, probably, that this game, which didn't sell particularly well, went on to be one of the most influential titles in the history of the medium. The general public never gave a good goddamn about Super Metroid, but people who loved video games did. Game developers, journalists, and even cosplayers and those people who draw Zero Suit Samus every morning on DeviantArt made sure that their favorite game kept finding new audiences. And while the world might not have been ready in 1994, Super Metroid fits in pretty well in the 21st century. You start out in a desolate, downright gloomful scene. It's raining. There's no music at this point in the game. You hear the sound of distant thunder cracking and echoing through the caves. You're looking for a way down, deeper into a dead world. You come across familiar locations, whether you remember a previous adventure in 1986 or just the game's brief intro sequence. You know you've been here before, and you know some big shit went down. It's a broken, eerie place, and you don't want to stay over long. Soon, a sign of life. Something's watching you. Is it sentient, or is this some automated remnant of a defeated civilization? As you make your way back up towards your ship, you find your answer. They were waiting for you. You'll soon find that the planet is much more alive than you previously thought, and almost everything here is hostile toward you. Now your work can begin. Even if you've never played a proper Metroid game before, you've probably spent some time with a game that was deeply influenced by its best ideas. The basic tenets of Metroidian game design are non-linear, maze-like worlds, progress gated by ability enhancements, and often the ability for savvy players to break the intended progression, as well as rich atmospheres and environmental storytelling. Basically. A surprising, disproportionate number of great indie games fit the bill, and often proudly label themselves Metroidvanias. Cave Story was probably the first real good one, and Shadow Complex showed what a modern Metroid might look like. Since then, we've been treated to a steady stream of new twists on the old formula, from games like Axiom Verge and Guacamelee to Ori and the Blind Forest and the masterful Hollow Knight. More on that in an upcoming video. But even games that don't come with a Metroid sticker on the box can trace aspects of their designs back to Super Metroid. Dark Souls doesn't have power-ups that organically unlock the map, but it certainly feels like a Metroid game. Lordran is one of the best examples of an interconnected, non-linear map out there, and the way its story is gleaned from item descriptions and environmental clues feels a lot like Metroid Prime, more than any other game I've played. Terraria might not seem much like Super Metroid at a glance, but when you get rid of the ability to remove and place blocks, admittedly important, what are you left with? You venture down into color-coded caverns, collecting power-ups that enable you to progress further and take on the game's assortment of bosses. Sure, you've got a little house up top, but the actual gameplay is extremely Metroid. If nothing else, Super Metroid helped to elevate an industry. It's a game that takes itself seriously. It's not just a toy, it's a body of work created by artists, and it stands proud next to great films and albums. The love and dedication that went into creating this world, with tremendous respect for the player and the vision, is still rare today. In its own time, it was one of a few key pioneers, alongside classic JRPGs, who helped to show the rest of us what video games could be. It's hard to describe the gameplay of Super Metroid, which is probably why we use it to describe other games. It's not really an action game, which is what they put on the box back in the day, for lack of better options. You shoot things, sure, but it's rarely much of a challenge. Enemies exist as a part of the environment, and they each serve their purpose, but it isn't exactly Contra. Shooting isn't the point. And it's definitely not a platformer. You do a lot of jumping, but the controls aren't really designed for precision. Everything about the way Samus moves, shoots, or interacts with the environment in any way is built for a game about exploration. But in order for a game about exploration to be satisfying, it has to focus on things that most other games would consider secondary to gameplay. Super Metroid excels because of its atmosphere and storytelling. Yes, I said storytelling. On the surface, the story is simple enough, and maybe a little bit contrived. A woman drops off her baby at daycare, but gets a call as soon as she pulls onto the freeway and finds out the kid has been napped. She runs around town wrecking shit until she finds the baby, who tries to eat her, but then remembers that she's its mother, so the kid helps mom fuck up a Brainosaurus Rex. More important than the plot itself is the storytelling, which is to say, the way in which the story is told. The game never explicitly tells you anything, but you feel it. And anyone who plays this game and says they didn't genuinely care about their big green jellyfish is lying to you. This story is told with carrion flies, broken glass, and sad purring. The music of the Metroid universe is absolutely core to its character. The original Metroid stands out for attempting an atmospheric score with mixed results. Sparse bleeps and bloops can certainly set a tone, but there isn't much room on the NES to bring a place to life with rich sonic detail. Super Metroid took the ideas of the NES classic and did them justice. That original 8-bit score was created by Hip Tanaka, one of the great stewards of Nintendo's early Sonic philosophies. However, from Super Metroid onward, with one notable exception, all of the Metroid titles have been musically led by Kenji Yamamoto. It's unfortunate he shares his name with another, better-known and somewhat disreputable composer for the Dragon Ball cartoon series, but that can't be helped. Listen to the soundtracks for Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, and you'll know why it's so important that I mention him. Super Metroid is often described as a game with a lot of backtracking, but what does that really mean? It sounds like you make progress for a while and then you just sort of turn around and do it again, but in reverse. That's not how this works. In truth, Super Metroid is a great big loop-de-loop, a path that intersects with itself here and there. You explore an area and move on. You'll return later, but not by retracing your steps. The main path you've been following will cut through a familiar area where you can now do something you couldn't do before. The game at least tries to keep you on its intended path of progression, and it's very good at doing this. If you're finding things a little too difficult, exploring the world behind you is a great way of leveling up. It's not unlike grinding mobs in an RPG, but thankfully, it's a lot more engaging. Equally important, if you do happen to get a bit lost, the rewards that are sprinkled throughout the world ensure that getting lost doesn't feel bad. Super Metroid is designed to allow for a wide range of possibilities. The main path is always available to you, and it can be surprisingly linear, but you're not forced to follow it. In fact, experienced players can pretty much do anything they want. Super Metroid is the first game I'm aware of that was designed with great care toward an intended progression that simultaneously allows players to break that design in myriad ways. You can, if you want, defeat the bosses in reverse order. The only thing stopping new players from doing this is their skill level, as the moves required are pretty tricky and most people will never know that they had the option. Very few people have ever accidentally wall jumped up a vertical surface, or bombed their way across a gap too large to jump. While these things are difficult to pull off, they're not bugs. They're programmed into the game on purpose, and their only use is to disobey its design. It says something that the people who made this game decided it was worth spending time and resources on features most people would never discover. A telling example is the ability for players to disable their upgrades. There's no benefit to turning off your ability to jump high or run fast, but you can if you want to. If you turn off some of your weapon upgrades, you idiot, you can play with strange, almost useless charge effects, unique to each beam type. Why can you do that? Because somebody at Nintendo thought you might wonder if you could do that, and they wanted to reward you for trying. That's the design philosophy of this entire game. Super Metroid changed video games with an approach to game design that was innovative, stupidly ambitious, immensely risky, and ultimately delivered on everything it set out to do. Nintendo threw down a gauntlet and challenged the industry to create more games with a strong, artistic vision for perhaps a different type of player, and we're still reaping the rewards today. It's arguably one of the best games you can pick up and play right now, more than 25 years later. And in 1994, it was probably the greatest game ever made. Subscribe for more gaming content. I'll be comparing Super Metroid to its venerable modern-day challenger, Hollow Knight, in the near future, and I want to get hands-on with the brand new sequel to Spelunky as soon as I can, probably next week. I'm going to try to post videos every week, so let me know what you think in the comments or any games you want me to cover on this channel. I'm new here, so I'm pretty open to ideas. And hey, thanks for watching.